Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jody Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Red Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional, providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hello, Justin Daniels here. I am a partner at the law firm Baker Donaldson, and I practice M&A and tech transactions. I am passionate about helping companies solve complex cyber and privacy challenges during the life cycle of their business. I am the cyber quarterback, helping clients design and implement cyber plans, as well as help them manage and recover from data breaches.
And this episode is brought to you by Red Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, e-commerce, professional services, and digital media. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there is greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more and to check out our new best-selling book, actually, I guess it's not really new anymore. It is our 1-year celebrated best-selling book, Data Reimagined, Building Trust One Bite at a Time. Visit redcloveradvisors.com. You're laughing at me.
I know, because a year goes by fast.
You're not new anymore.
I know, but we still have people who
feels new.
Well, we still have people who read the book and comment on it.
It is true. It is new to them. Thank you to all those wonderful people who have picked up our book, read it, and even left us wonderful, heartwarming comments on social. We really appreciate it.
And I'm sure our listeners will appreciate the fact that Jody and I both got asked to be quoted in a magazine, and we did, and only Jody got the quote in the magazine. So I had to take it for, she won, I lost. Okay.
It was fun. But today I'm really excited because we are going to dive into B2B privacy programs. And with us, we have Raymond, who is the Privacy Compliance Officer for ZoomInfo Technologies. He is a privacy, compliance, and data governance professional with an MBA and 20 plus years of progressive experience in customer data privacy, information security, regulatory compliance, and risk management. Al, welcome to the show.
Thank you both for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Welcome to the craziness of our show.
You know what? Maybe one of the shows we can have like Al or someone come on, and we'll have like a privacy and security song. We'll have a guitarist and everything.
We could have like a whole band. We could build a band.
Security, scaring is caring. Privacy, when they want to collect your data, just say no.
That was cute. It's not often you break out into song, but I'm going to bring you back to the present.
Yes, let's focus on our guest, Al.
Yes.
As we always like to discuss, tell us a little bit about your career journey and how you came to your current role.
So Justin, you'll appreciate this, I think, because I started in information security before I evolved, as I say, into privacy. I started an information protection team. And as I got more and more involved in data protection and data governance, I was debating whether I wanted to go to law school or not. And I just couldn't justify the time and the cost. But I really love the law aspect of privacy. So, the privacy is a lot about law, if not all about law. And so I gravitated more and more towards that. And as I assumed more responsibilities in one of the early companies I was at, I became a chief privacy officer, the first one that they had there. And so being a CPO, you've got to embrace all and more privacy duties, responsibilities. So I took that path instead, but I still got a CISSP as well as my CIPP, because the people who reported to me were security engineers. And I wanted to be able to talk their language so that when we communicated and I had to talk about controls and the importance of controls upstream, they would take me more seriously because I was able to speak their language versus me just being a compliance guy or just talking the law to them, which they weren't interested in hearing. They were speaking the language of privacy, technologies, and encryption and triple DES and all that kind of stuff. That's stuff they appreciated. So I got the CISSP, balancing it with the CIPP, and just got more involved in compliance activities, risk management activities, data governance. Here I am today.
Always a fun story.
Right. But
Did you ever question going to law school?
I don't know that I ever questioned it. I think as I've gotten out, kind of a little different than Al is I've gotten several degrees from YouTube University because to learn blockchain, to learn like mobile edge computing, uh, you have to be a lifelong learner, which is what Al's really saying, because these technologies evolve. And if you really want to be taken seriously by people, you have to be able to speak tech language. You also have to be able to understand the law and the business purpose, because a lot of these laws are around, how do you navigate a business purpose, but also comply with the law. So to me, when I listen to Al, to me, it's another great example of you have to be dedicated to being a lifelong learner because the space is so evolving.
That is true. Now, ZoomInfo is a love-hate relationship with almost all of my clients, especially if obviously those in the B2B space, because marketers and sales teams love buying third-party data to use and grow their companies. And privacy teams worry about the viability to use that data under a variety of different privacy laws. How can privacy teams be comfortable and make their marketing people happy?
It is definitely a delicate balance. There's definitely a dance involved, but the experience I've had so far at ZoomInfo is that when we're meeting with the privacy teams, privacy counsel, compliance folks at an existing or potential client, they really want to be on side with the laws in their jurisdiction. And so they're effectively saying, we know the salespeople love the tool. We know the marketing people love the tool. It really gives them a leg up to be able to sell our products. But we, of course, have to be on side to the regulations. So ZoomInfo, can you help us do so? So quite often the salespeople bring us to the table and we talk to the compliance people. We talk to the chief privacy officer. We talk to the privacy legal, privacy counsel to make sure that they're comfortable with what the services we're offering. And that way it just greases the skids for the salespeople to do their discussion. So a lot of the things we talk about is, there's co-controller relationships. Sometimes we're joint controllers, depending on the relationship. And we make sure we confer to them that they have obligations in addition to us. And when they acquire data, they have certain obligations in addition to what we're doing behind the scenes as well. So we talk about providing their own privacy notices to the people whose data they acquire, to let them know where they got the data. And if they want to be taken out of their database, fine. And they can pass that opt-out on to us. We'll take them out of our database as well, right? So it's full transparency on where the data is, who owns it, and what the purpose of the collection was. The other thing we want to make sure that people are aware of is make sure you got your proper Article 6 legal basis. It's not just consent. Like everyone thinks just consent is the only thing that you need to be able to market to people, to email people, to sell to people. But there's 6 different legal bases under Article 6. Make sure you're picking the right one. And so again, transparency, how are you using the data? Put it in your privacy policy. Offer an easy way to opt out. Don't make it a dark pattern to try to figure out how to get out of the database. If you don't want to be marketed to, someone tells you to take me off the list, take them off the list. It's just not worth the aggravation of them complaining to a regulator or a DPA and then having to deal with the downstream. So transparency is the word of the day.
Al, you mentioned in some situations you could be a co-controller. Can you share potentially any scenarios where that might exist?
If we're both using the data and making independent determinations of how the data is being used, it's more rare than it is just being an independent controller of the data. Sometimes we'll use the same data for our purposes to market to the similar or same clients that our clients are and customers that our clients are marketing to. But for the most part, it's usually independent controller relationships, or sometimes we're a processor as well. If Red Clover is using ZoomInfo to target clients or to look for talent, we would be a processor in that scenario.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you expanding on that and really highlighting also the Article 6 piece. So for anyone who is not remembering, Article 6 ties you to GDPR obligations and you need a legal basis. There's 6 to pick from, and you do have to go through the right analysis to be able to identify which one applies to you so that everyone, privacy, marketing, sales, legal, can all be happy and grow your company all at the same time. Why are you laughing at me today?
Entertained. So Al, I want to kind of segue. I find as I increasingly work on deals that involve artificial intelligence, which for those deals to work, they really want access to lots and lots of data. And so I'm just curious when we talk about B2B privacy programs, because when I work on AI deals, it comes up all the time in terms of what you're allowed to use the client data you're collecting for in terms of AI. Talk to us a little bit about underlying that. What are the big challenges in building and maintaining a B2B privacy program?
I think the biggest misconception is that it's easier than B2C. And so I spent the last 20 years in the B2C world, mostly in financial services. So I'm knee deep, neck deep in Graham Leach Bliley, sensitive SPI, all individual customer information. Coming to ZoomInfo, it's business to business data. And we make a pretty strong argument that we are using data that is business to business only, what's on your business card, what's on your LinkedIn profile, nowhere near as sensitive as your bank account information, your passport, your genetics, any of those sensitive SPI categories. But it is not as easy as you think it is. It's not just we're B2B, we have no rules to follow. It's just in the US alone, you still have TCPA, you still have CAN-SPAM to follow. We still have a regulator. We weren't as heavily regulated as we were in the financial services world, but we still have a regulator. The FTC is particularly active, as I'm sure you guys both know, in this space. So there's still a regulator to be aware of. The other challenge is educating employees on the nuances between the two, and educating employees in general, on privacy and security compliance is always challenging, but educating them on the nuances between the B2B and B2C and making sure they're able to convey that to people they speak to, the differences. The other thing that we do quite often is we socialize the laws, the actual laws, the names of the laws with employees and what they mean. So we're not trying to make people privacy experts. We wouldn't be so cruel to try to do that. But we do want to make sure that when they're having conversations, whether it's a salesperson or a marketer or somebody in talent, that they're somewhat conversant with laws like GDPR, CCPA, so they can tell prospective clients, yes, we have designed programs that are in compliance with these laws and rules and regs. We're happy to bring in experts to be able to work out the nuances. But we don't want them to be ignorant of the obligations that we have, even in the B2B space. And so the probably the hardest thing, the last thing I'd say is the biggest challenge is keeping it B2B only, right? There's always a scope creep. Well, should we collect more for this? Can we expand our product line there? What if we inadvertently collect Social Security numbers or other kind of inferences that we make? Then you start getting into other rules, regs, and laws that you have to be compliant with, and the administrative burden and overhead becomes, exponentially greater. So keeping it B2B, if you're a B2B company, that way you stay in your lane and you stay focused on B2B only, it makes it a lot easier for everyone.
Al, you mentioned that there are differences between B2B and B2C. Can you share maybe 2 of those big differences that you share with your employees internally?
So we talk about the kind of data that we collect. Like we're very exacting on, this is business data for business people to be able to sell, market to other business people. We don't need to know what your social security number is. We don't need to collect it. We don't need to know what your reading preferences are. We don't need to know what kind of religious denomination you are a member. We don't need to know your passport number, your blood type, or your medical conditions. We want to know what's on your business card. We want to know what's on your LinkedIn profile. Like that's the big emphasis there. And we want to make sure that we don't scope creep into that area. And we also want to make sure the employees are, again, educated on the nuances of those two to keep the conversation to B2B. Other jurisdictions outside the US, like email address, even a business email is still considered to be PII, personally identifiable information. There's no way around it, right? So we do fall into some kind of PII type obligations there versus the US, but we're still trying to keep the big focus. The big thing is B2B, business to business. We're signing business people for business reasons. The reason why ZoomInfo, I think, is so successful is because you remember, back in the day, 20, 25 years ago, if you were a copy salesman and you wanted to sell copiers to a big company, you had to pick up the phone, you call the 800 number, and 25 people later, you found the person who is in charge of buying copiers. So you annoyed 24 people on the way to get to that person because you had no other choice. Like there was nothing else to get you there. Now we have the right number, the right name, the person who's expecting calls from people. Yes, I'm in the market for copiers. I'm in the market for security software. I'm in the market for privacy consulting services. You know who that person is. You're targeting them with the right call, hopefully at the right time.
I appreciate you expanding. A lot of large organizations, some of the challenges in building a privacy program, you're going to have a policy, you're going to have a procedure, you're going to say, here's how we're going to do it. And then you kind of have to hope that it's actually going to be done. What do you find to be successful to address this, challenge of building those policies and procedures and not always knowing if they're actually working?
It is definitely challenging, especially if you're in a large company. The last company I was at had 265,000 employees, right? So across 20, 25 countries. The smaller the company, obviously, the easier it is, but still, at the end of the day, I think you still have the same challenges. I like to call my technique the charm offensive. So letting everyone know who you are, who your team is, and that they exist. Which is a pretty big challenge in some places, because you'd be surprised how many times I've had a company and they're like, I didn't even know we had a privacy officer. I didn't even know we had a compliance team. And that is on us, right, for not being able to communicate that effectively and as broadly as we should have. But we have to make sure that people know that we exist and then how we can help facilitate business and not impede it, right? Because as you probably both are aware, a lot of what we get tagged with unfairly is they're the Department of No. They're the VP of No. And I know if I'm going to come and ask for this, the answer is going to be, Justin's going to say, no, we can't do it because technology, the rule, the reg. And so like, you don't want to have that reputation, because if you do, ultimately what will happen is people go around you and ultimately make the company more insecure at the end of the day, right? So you have to get the reputation of a reasonable person, and you're helping facilitate business, and you're not impeding it. The other thing I think that I always try to do is put a name to a privacy face. And I don't care if people come to me with the wrong question. I just care if they say, I had a privacy question and I thought of you. The word privacy, compliance, and me, if people put those two things together, then I'm successful. If I don't know the answer or I'm the wrong person, I'll triage it to the right person. But at least people are saying, we have a person, or I got a guy. I'm going to ask him this question. I think he's the right person. He may not be, but at least he's a good place to start. And if it's a legal question, obviously my friends in legal get it. If it's a compliance, we can up the compliance. If it's a privacy question, great. I'll be able to handle it. The other thing that works well, Jody, is that we've created talk tracks, we call them. And these are just talk tracks for common questions, typical questions that we get from privacy people, compliance people, security people, legal people outside. They ask generally the same questions over and over again to the organization. How do you ensure compliance? How do you collect data? Do you get consent? Do you need consent? Can you do business in Europe? The classic kind of questions. So we have these talk tracks that we've created for the non-compliance, the non-privacy, the non-legal people. If a client says to them, I'm interested in your product, love the service, but I have a question about this compliance issue, privacy issue. We've got talk tracks. It's a simple 3 lines, three sentences that generally say, this is how we do it. This is how we're compliant. We've taken Article 6, 1F as legitimate interest as our legal basis under GDPR, those kind of things. And we socialize that with the sales folks, with the marketing people, to get them somewhat conversant in the process so that we're all invested in the same messaging throughout the organization. And then finally, my team is the assurance team. We do privacy compliance. We do also enterprise risk management. So we have a motto. It's evidence over confidence is our motto. It's like that kind of trust but verify thing that Ronald Reagan used to say a lot. And the kind of confidence that we get is we do assurance reviews. Just like as a second line organization, compliance, their job is to make sure the business is doing what they say they're doing. So we do assurance reviews throughout the organization to make sure that thing is happening. So to your original question is, it's an assurance, it's somewhat confidence. We can't boil the ocean, but we do targeted risk-based approaches to the reviews, and that's how we get confident that the machine is working properly and people are doing what they say they're doing, at least at some scale.
Al, I'm thinking we could have a 21st century update to trust but verify. You could put a sign up that says, let's not have truthiness, which means something that feels true but isn't supported by the facts.
Right. That's good. That's good.
And I was thinking, you always want your t-shirt with know your data. I think I should create privacy bells. Al, when you were explaining that you're so excited when someone comes to you with any privacy related question, even if you're not the right person, they've associated privacy with Al or privacy with fill in the blank person. I completely agree and used to have the same belief when I was building a privacy program. And I always had an imaginary cheer and flag anytime someone came, and I would count how many times. And actually, from a measurement perspective, all those questions are valuable. That means that you're educating people about privacy. And when I'm doing a training, I always say, you just want people to come to you. Just know you equal privacy. And I'm going to create privacy bells. I want, that's my next thing. Privacy bells.
It says your messaging is working. It's getting into the bloodstream of the organization, number one. And two, it's making you indispensable to the organization, because everyone thinks, if I have a privacy question, I have one person I know I'm going to, and that's that person there. She knows privacy. She's my privacy contact. And it makes you indispensable to the organization and valuable.
Right. People have the same for other areas. If you have an HR question, you go to the HR person. If you have finance and legal and all these things, you know who to go to. Privacy is newer. And we're getting there.
You have to build a program to create awareness with multiple touch points. It's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So at my firm, we're getting multiple communications about cybersecurity, because again, that's not building awareness until, of course, they get hacked or whatnot. Then the whole company.
I'm bringing us back. B2B privacy today. You can have your Cybersecurity Awareness Month another day. In fact, there's 31 days to have it.
No, not really. It's about 6.
Well, that's not my fault. You've had 24 of them already. We're back to B2B programs. Your turn.
I'm allowed to speak now?
Yes, you are.
After I was told to bring up the word cybersecurity again. Okay.
Oh, I didn't say that.
Uh-huh. We'll have to roll the tape. Many B2B companies act in a variety of different roles. Could be service provider, processor, vendor. You can pick your favorite description from various different privacy laws. And they also want to use the data to help their own customers. So how should company deal with those business requests in light of the different hats that they wear?
I think a lot of it comes down to the contract, the black and white that says how you can or cannot use the data that we either purchase from you or that we share with you. And that generally sets the stage. And it also determines, are you going to be a processor here? Are you going to be a controller there? Is there going to be joint ownership, or we joint controllers, independent controllers? And it can also dictate the terms of how you can use this data that we're sharing or we're buying from you. Are we allowing any secondary use of the data? Can you use it for your own purposes that we share with you as a vendor or service provider? Again, it comes back to the T word, transparency between the two parties. And this way you can always, if need be with other clients, ask you how and who do you share data with. In many cases, you have to provide that information. So you need that transparency to be able to say, we provide to these parties for these purposes. And then at the end of the day, in my opinion, it comes down to one of my favorite topics, vendor management 101. You got to know what your vendors are doing. You've got to review your vendors. You got to test your vendors. You have to oversee your vendors because their risk is your risk, and you cannot outsource accountability.
So I wanted to ask a follow-up question actually for you and Jody. So just for the benefit of our audience, obviously there's a privacy policy that's outward facing, how data might be collected on a website. But really what we're talking about here when we talk about the contract is if I have a contract with ZoomInfo to share data or whatnot, it's really the contract that determines what you're going to do with the data, how you're going to share it. And so people need to understand the distinction of having a good privacy program isn't just the privacy policy on your website, but it's having privacy involved when you negotiate and consummate contracts, because as you said, that contract will define the relationship to that data and how it's going to be used. Could you maybe elaborate on that for the benefit of our audience?
So we'd also not only adhere to whatever the contract says and how we can or cannot use, or how they can or cannot use data, we would probably also weave into our outward facing privacy policy generally how we use data. And most companies have pretty extensive publicly facing privacy policies. There's sections in there if we use third parties, how we use data, how we use your data. We tend to share it with vendors. We tend to share it with partners. We tend to use these aspects of it. So again, you're just really extending some terms of the contract in the data usage aspect of it to the outward facing. For the average person who falls upon your website, they have a sense of, are they sharing my data? Are they selling my data or not? And with whom, generally speaking? Because you're going to have to disclose it in many cases if you get a data subject access request. So the transparency should be there up front, because if it's not there, someone will find it out and then you're going to pay the price for it. So again, transparency.
So to echo what you were just saying, Al, what I see, Justin, is, and when we are writing privacy notices, it kind of depends on the kind of B2B vendor. So for some of them, it might be the outside privacy notice is all about what's happening on the actual website, the marketing that company is doing to identify future B2B customers. But if they are processing data significantly, like they're an email service provider, there's ZoomInfo that has a lot of data, then there tends to be either a significant section, as Al just said, or a completely separate policy that says, here's how our application is using the data. Here's how us as a company is using the data, to be able to clearly explain to someone, here's the data we collect basically as a business or a controller. And then here's the kind of data and how we're processing it when we wear our processor, service provider, vendor kind of hat. So for some companies, you don't need a big section because there might not be a whole lot. For some companies, there's a lot, and then there's a bigger section or a separate policy.
Right.
I also wanted to emphasize what you had shared in terms of vendor management, because for me, this is why I actually love working with B2B companies, and an area that I think B2B companies miss, which is when you're the customer, when you're that processor or service provider, your customers are likely listening to podcasts like this and are employing strong vendor management programs, which means they come knocking to you and say, hi, here's this great contract that someone like Justin just wrote. And here's my assessment that my privacy and security teams have said I have to ask you. And then that team, if not prepared, loses sales. And I see it all the time. And this is why, in addition to obviously regulators complying with privacy laws, but building a really strong B2B privacy program is helpful to the business, because it helps you actually sell more quickly when you're able to answer through all those questions that they have. You can close the sale more quickly, move along, and everyone is happy.
Right. And when we're sitting in front of a prospective client or existing client, we're effectively in a vendor management scenario, right? They're asking us, how are we going to get comfortable using you? Because your risk is going to be our risk. And the chief privacy officer is not going to sign off on a risky client because she or he may be held personally liable depending on the jurisdiction. So we've got to be able to be as transparent as possible. We got to have all of our I's dotted, T's crossed, and be able to answer with confidence that we've got this covered. We will give you confidence that you're not going to have a problem with us as a vendor, because we know what the rules are, we know what the laws are in the jurisdiction, and we've got a internal vendor management program be able to make sure that we are doing what we say to you that we are doing.
Makes sense.
Dude. So, Al, when you are out and about, hanging out at a cocktail party, do you have a best personal privacy tip you'd like to share when you're at the cocktail party with folks?
So again, Justin, I think you'll appreciate this, that I think it's not just one tip, it's a layered security approach to privacy, because I don't think there's one thing that's a silver bullet for privacy, because there's just so many aspects of privacy that people deal with day in, day out, technologies, et cetera.
Hold on, Al. Jody, are we allowed to? He's talking about security now. You said
Yes.
B2B Are we allowed to deviate there?
Yeah, yes, we are.
Okay. Al, please continue.
And so it's kind of like some old school, some new school. Like my favorite old school one is I tell people never put the flag up on your mailbox when you put mail in there for the postman to come pick up your mail, because it's a literally and figuratively red flag that tells people there's mail in this mailbox. Quite likely it's a check in somewhere. So now you've got a check, you've got the account number, you got the routing number, and you've got their signature. And maybe because I was in banking for so long that I always knew what you could do with that kind of information. So never do that. The mailman's going to get it anyway. You don't have to tell them, because they're going to open the thing to put your mail in anyway. So you never need to put the flag up. The more practical thing, though, is one of the things is freeze all your credit lines, your TransUnion, your Equifax, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian. Freeze them. It prevents people from opening credit in your name. It's probably one of the biggest things you can do, most effective things you can do in an easy stroke. It's free. There's no cost. There's some inconvenience if you're trying to get a loan or you try to buy a car, you have to unfreeze it and then freeze it back. But for the most part, it's one of the biggest bangs for your bucks to protect your identity as well, because people can't open up credit in your name. They can't spend money in your name. It's a big win. And then finally, Justin, this is refer back to something you talked about very early about the SIM swap. Put a PIN on your SIM card. I was a victim of a SIM swap fraud. Somebody got my account, my carrier account, and they were able to get to other accounts because it was just all connected. So I looked into my carrier and my phone, and I could put a PIN on the SIM. So the SIM won't work. You can't swap it. Unless you know the PIN on the code. Easy to do. It's free. Takes a little bit of involvement when you reboot your phone, because now you have to put in a code in and the SIM. So you have to remember what the SIM is. But it's like your ATM. It's the same number. But it prevents the SIM swap, which can do a lot of damage. People don't realize it because it's a fairly, I guess, unknown threat. But when it hits you, it's pretty expansive.
That's a good one. We also had kind of similar in the phone arena. We had a friend share, you can freeze porting of your number. So not quite the same as SIM, but if they were going to try and move carriers, we've frozen.
Well, that's essentially what SIM swap is.
Yeah.
If they try to take your phone to port it to another carrier or port it somewhere else.
Yeah, but you don't always have to port it. I mean, you could just keep it on the same carrier. It's possible. I'm just saying you could have both scenarios.
Okay.
That's all.
There.
All right. When you are not managing privacy and risk, what do you like to do for fun?
So you can see my not a prop here is a guitar. I've been playing now on, I don't know, 45 years or so. And it's the cheapest psychiatrist I've ever had. and I'm in a band. I'm in a working band. So twice a month, every month we have live gigs. So it's quite rewarding to be able to keep doing it and be doing something that I dreamed about being a rock star when I was a 15-year-old with long flowing hair like Jody has now, but those days are over. But I can still play and entertain people, and it's very rewarding, and it's probably the longest thing that's given me the most satisfaction, be able to play the guitar. And now I can almost play anything that I hear because I've been doing it for so long. I recognize the patterns and the keys and whatnot. So that's my favorite thing to do.
Well, Al, maybe you and Jody could put together, you could be on guitar and Jody could do vocals and you can call your little band Article 6.
Next IPP conference. There we go.
And you should the two of you should show up and have a little song for privacy that you do, and your band is called Article 6.
I think the IPP would actually like that. We would probably get.
Oh my goodness, they would have loved that.
and you know what that means, Jody? Free admission to the conference.
There we go.
There you
I
go.
like it.
I'll you know what? I'll take my marketing fee, but honestly, I really think if you went to them with a little marketing ditty from the band Article 6, I bet you they'd think, oh, that's pretty cool.
I like it.
Because Jody can sing.
That's funny.
Beautiful.
Well, Al, thank you so much for sharing all about B2B privacy programs today. If people would like to connect or learn more, where should they go?
The easiest thing is just to look me up on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with people, like-minded people. Want to learn more about privacy, want to share things. Always happy to connect with folks.
Well, wonderful. We will put that in the show notes. And Al, we're so glad that you joined us today. And for those who can hear, potentially our dog in the background is also really excited that you joined us today.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. I really appreciate you guys having me. It was a fun conversation, and best of luck to you. And congratulations on the 1-year anniversary of your book.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.